ma'am.
Another,
And then this.
yes. Well, it's a little more detailed because it was questioned as to whether all the pages printed, because I had one that they didn't print, so it should be like 12. That
How many pages?
was presented tonight,
I only got 9.
because
So
Miss
we,
Amanda's here. What?
I thought that.
Oh, that's a PowerPoint.
Well, I don't know.
So, but that doesn't have anything to do with the budget.
Okay.
That's the 2018 draft for 2018 budget.
How old is that?
Right.
You want
Mayor.
Yes.
Mine's got 9.
You want
You need one or no?
You have a budget with,
9. Okay.
Yours has got 12.
Yeah.
mine's
So,
But I
Sandra, can you help me out?
thank you.
Oh. What are you gonna look
I
at?
think it's a different format. Between this one and this one, this is a different
You
format.
know, the one that.
But do this one, because this is the one that's gonna make more sense for us.
April had given me this other day.
She updated, and that's,
Okay,
yeah,
so this-
basically the same, she just made sure there were numbers on the page.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I'm with the right thing here.
Mine's the January 4th.
Mayor.
I have mine, how many am I supposed to have? She gave me this one Monday.
I don't know, there's the lady's ass right there.
April, do you mind making us a copy of the budgets with 12 pages
I
instead
made
of 9?
them, I thought they had their copies.
No, not the updated one.
Well, there's 12 in this,
Mine did
And the other one
have
you
9,
said-
they gave me the right one.
different format.
This one is the one I just printed.
12.
Okay,
I
You've
have.
got that one,
She
you've got
has.
that one.
he gave me the right one, I didn't have the right one.
Mine
does
is
it.
mine.
So she needs.
Mine was 9 too, so that
How
was.
many did you you didn't even count?
I can't even
How many papers?
Hers is not.
12.
What's that here?
Okay, then, I don't know why they misprinted when I gave them.
Yeah, right.
Well,
You probably don't have, well, I don't know, I gave yours last night, didn't I?
Yeah.
I got a quick little question though, I know you started meeting, but is all of it really the same numbers? Cause I already went through, okay.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why it only printed to 8 and not.
This one, what you gave me today was 9 pages.
Okay, then-
12.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is.
Okay, all right, just wanna make sure I have the right thing.
Here's my print off the new one. That one's the right one.
I got the right one, I'm sorry. But, did you need one, since you gave me one?
We're good, we can share.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Thank you.
All right. All right, this one, yours is right. I don't know, some printed all pages, some printed 8, some printed 9, I have no idea. Didn't make.
I've got 4.
All right, now you blame it on the copy machine. Where you going?
You need a copy or?
I've got my copies there.
Okay.
It's like 6:33.
Did you need to go somewhere? Or you good?
Yes, that's the one.
I'm sorry I asked.
But Amanda's here and ready to start whenever you guys.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to stand and do the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to all the veterans and their families for their service. Greatly appreciated. on the agenda is audit update. Ms. Amanda Wilkinson, CPA with Bates and Carter, can provide some information and updates, if you would.
Good evening.
Good evening.
May I stand over here? Can you see and hear me well?
Sure.
Okay.
We're good.
So, may I first introduce myself to those of you that haven't met me yet? My name is Amanda Wilson. I'm an audit partner with Bates and Carter, and this is the second fiscal year that we've been engaged with the city of Statham. So we completed the fiscal year 17 audit, and we are in the process of working on the fiscal year 18 and 19. And so what I'm here to do is to give you an update based on what we're able to show on the fiscal year 18 results. And when we get the fiscal year 19 numbers drafted, I'll be able to come back and do an update for that as well. So this is unaudited numbers currently, but this is, and I think that these numbers are a good enough representation for you to be able to see the fiscal year 18 activities in relation to the previous years. So I printed out the slides that I've prepared for my discussion with you guys, if you would like to follow along. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to interrupt me. Usually when I give these presentations, I talk about the general fund first. So the first thing that I wanted to discuss is the general fund revenue in fiscal year 18 compared to the previous year. And revenues in fiscal year 18 have increased by about $440,000. A lot of that is due to growth that we've been seeing throughout other municipalities in Georgia. $80,000 was an increase in property tax, $50,000 was an increase in loft. So those both correlate to increased growth in your community. There was a decrease in fines and forfeitures, and the big effect from capital lease proceeds decreasing is because in fiscal year 17, the city had approved debt that shows in the general fund as proceeds, and in fiscal year 18, there was no new debt that was being recorded on the general fund level. So that decrease in capital lease proceeds that I've noted here of $287,000 is a decrease because there was not new debt approved by the council in fiscal year 18.
I got a real quick question.
Okay.
It says fines here decreased by $107,000. When we had the meeting across the street and we talked about the fines in previous years, it might have been 16,
Mm-hmm.
and you would, how in the world did we get so many fines? And at that particular time, we had that police officer that was given so many.
Yes.
So what I wanted to tell the public, though, is that a lot of the fines that were given out during that time was way up here, and that's probably why it's
The fiscal
decreased
year
so much.
18 numbers are more consistent with
Right.
what you'd expect from a
So that's-
community of this size.
Right, so that's probably why that we've decreased so much. I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
Right.
Transfers from the utility funds also increased in fiscal year 18. A lot of that is because the transfers in the previous year hadn't been made, so the fiscal year 18 transfers caught the activity up. So moving on to the next slide, the expenditures in fiscal year 18 decreased by $307,000. And again, here we see that the proceeds, the capital lease proceeds that were approved in 2017 weren't replicated in 2018 because there was not new debt. So those expenditures also decreased. So much of this decrease is related to the decrease in the revenue that we've just discussed. Also, public works spending had decreased by about $40,000 in fiscal year 18. Other than that, most of the expenditures in the general fund were consistent with the previous year. And the pre-audited financial reports indicate that at the end of fiscal year 18, the city grew the general fund balance by $332,000, which means that that was the difference between what you brought in revenue and what you spent in expenditures. And that leaves the general fund in a good place at the end of the year, at end of fiscal year 18, which we'll see in just a second. Your next slide is a trend line where you can see the revenues and expenditures in the general fund again, year over year. And as you can see, the revenues in 2018 were over the expenditures, and that's what's causing the increase in the general fund balance. If you move to the next slide, we'll continue to talk about that fund balance in the general fund. The GFOA, the Georgia Finance Officers Association, recommends that your fund balance that is unassigned and available for the council to use for operations be between 15 and 25% of your annual operating costs. And the reason that they say that is because for cash flow purposes, if your fund balance percentage that you see on this slide is between 15 and 25%, that means that the city has on hand enough money to be able to pay for about 3 to 4 months worth of costs in the first part of the next coming year. As you'll see at the end of fiscal year 18, that percentage is currently calculating at just about 24%, which is on the high end of that benchmark that is being recommended for your consideration when you are focusing on fund balance in the general fund. So that is where you would like to see the fund balance to end at the end of the year, and it's showing that the city had the ability to cash flow the next few months' payment.
So in 17, we were at 3% in our fund balance.
Yes, and a lot of that is timing. Those transfers from the utility funds that I discussed earlier and the increase in revenues, those transfers hadn't been reported, so that money that was going to be transferred to the general fund hadn't been done so. So the reason that you see that sharp decline is mostly due to the timing of when things were being done. So this caught the city back up to where those cash balances that are going to be used by the general fund are actually reported in the general fund. So if you look at the next slide, I've created a trend line so that you can see what the cash balance is for the general fund over the past 5 years. So as you can see, that cash balance that's on hand has remained rather consistent. At the end of fiscal year 18, we're currently showing that the cash balance on hand for the general fund disposal is $131,000. So that covers the overview of the general fund, and I'm going to talk briefly about some of the other funds for the city in fiscal year 2018. First is SLOSS, which is another major fund for the city, so it's reported individually in the financial statements. In fiscal year 2018, the city collected $256,000 in revenue. None of that money was actually spent in fiscal year 18 because it was being reserved for the expenditure in future projects that are approved in the referendum. So as of the end of fiscal year 2018, the city had $655,000 available to be used on SLOSS-approved projects. Those projects include road improvements and water and sewer improvements from both the 2006 and 2012 SLOSS projects. If you'll go to the next page, I wanted to briefly touch on long-term debt and the governmental activities. Now, this is not focusing on the utilities. This is just for the governmental activities. At the end of fiscal year 18, we show that the city had long-term debt of about $154,000. That is primarily the capital leases that were initiated in fiscal year 2017 that we discussed previously. This debt service is mainly being carried by the general fund, and it's also a very low amount for a city of this size, and we'll see more of that in just a moment. So moving on to the next one, to talk about the water and sewer fund, the current unaudited operating income is showing right now that for fiscal year 18, there was an income of about $660,000. This number includes depreciation that we've estimated to be about $200,000 based on the previous year. And it does not consider the fact that this fund also made debt service payments of $200,000 out of the fund. So what this number is showing is that the fund is able to pay for its debt service and is able to keep up with the cost of restoring and replenishing its assets, which is the non-cash cost of depreciation that's shown here. The income that we are showing for operating income also does not include sewer connection fees, which in fiscal year 18 were about $110,000. Those fees are coming in from developers and are meant to be used for capital projects, so they're not included in the operating income in the fund. It also does not include the transfer to the general fund of $706,000 that we mentioned earlier in the general fund. The debt for this fund is about $3.4 million as of the end of fiscal year 18. These debts include revenue bonds and construction notes for the water system, which is what you'd expect to see for a utility of this size. And all of this debt is going to mature between 2028 and 2033. So if you flip to the next page, I've also given you a trend information about the revenue and expenditures for the water and sewer fund. So as you can see, revenue and expenditures are both going up, and the city has been able to maintain revenues being in excess of expenses from the last couple of years. And then if you'll move on to the next slide, I just wanted to touch on the solid waste fund. It's the smaller fund, and the operating income is showing for the unaudited numbers to be $15,000. And I've shown some trend information here to show that that operating income is it's trending upwards, and it has the ability over the last few years to pay expenses. And so if you'll flip to the next page, my final slide, I've included some information here that's benchmark information for the council to consider related to how the city is faring against the comparable cities in Georgia that are about the same size. And this information is available to you also. If you go to the GMA website, they have a peer cities tab where you can see what the cities that are related to your population size are doing. And so I wanted to show you on these slides what some of these certain key aspects are for the city and how they compare to your peer cities. So as you can see, if you're following along with me, property tax revenue for the city of Statham is a little bit higher than you would see in your peer cities that are comparably sized. The general fund expenditures are a little bit less, but considerably comparable to what you'd expect based on your peers. The revenue bond debt is higher than normal, or higher than what your peer cities are, and that's because you have this strong utility. Having a utility fund like you have requires maintenance and it requires assets, and you pay for those assets with these construction debts. And as you look at the governmental debt, you can see the significant difference. The city's governmental debt is much lower than you would expect to see from your peer city. And the unassigned general fund balance, which we had discussed earlier, which is your benchmark of trying to get between 15 and 25% of your operating costs every year, the city is right in line with other cities of your size. So those are the highlights of fiscal year 18 that I wanted to bring to your attention as we've been working through this. Do you have any questions for me?
What was the thing you said, our revenue bond debt is due to a strong utility?
The utility fund that you've got requires an infrastructure in place to be able to utilize it, run it, and have it. And so all of the debt that's related to that fund is directly correlated to the infrastructure and assets that it has.
Well, we commonly refer to as sewer bond here, I think.
Yes.
The 3.4 million.
Yes. Yes. And the fund is paying for its debt service and depreciation on those assets.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions for me?
Do you have a target completion date for the, are you doing 18 and 19 back to back together?
Yes, we are working on them concurrently. The fiscal year 18 is further along than fiscal year 19. We're kind of having to move through them in process, but I hope to release them at about the same time. We are still in the audit stages, and audits take a little bit of time. I'd like to thank the city and its staff for being so available to us as we've made all of the requests that we have. We are working towards getting those draft financial statements to the council to be able to review after we complete the final stages of the audit process for fiscal year 18.
Can you give us some kind of a target completion date? I mean, do you know when, if you had to guess when that would be done?
I would hope in the next couple months. I think that it's possible to have them drafted and ready to approve by the end of March. The audit process is through a lot of the obstacles that we needed to get through. There's a lot of tests there's things that we needed to do that we have completed. So I think that within the next month or two, we should be able to be in the approval process with the city.
You're saying 18 and 19 together?
I'm saying 18. I don't know enough about where we are in the fiscal year 19 process to give you an estimated date on that one yet. But we are working on it concurrently.
It's been a real pain point, as you know, for our city.
I do, and, I'm sorry.
These audits, I mean, our hands are tied in grant money. Our hands are tied in so many ways because of these audits. I know that you understand the importance of them, and I know there's no magic button you could hit to get them completed, but since you're here, I would, like to know a little bit more about the progress your firm has made.
We have been able to get these numbers that you're looking at here they are close to the draft numbers. We've been able to get through the trial balance and review the progress through fiscal year 18. One of the things that's been causing a roadblock is that there were differences that had to be adjusted from the way that the bookkeeping had been recorded in those previous years.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, looking at things that are a little bit old have a bit more difficult time reviewing them. So we've been able to get through a lot of those adjustments, and so now what we're in the final stages of is reviewing some of the more, some of the activity that happens throughout the year and the revenue for the utility fund. So I know that this is a time-sensitive issue, and we have been prioritizing what we can.
We sure do appreciate what you and your firm are doing. Thank you.
We enjoy working with the city, and I appreciate you having me to come and talk to you a little bit. Do you guys have any other questions for me? Well, I would like to tell you that if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or reach out. We are actively engaged with the city, and I will be here again to present fiscal year 19 when we have it together. And we keep in close contact with April, and she's been very responsive and stuff, and I'd like to thank her for all that time that it takes.
I just have one more question.
Yes, sir.
I know you've come to the city on 2 occasions and did a considerable amount of work here. Is there another date that you may be doing that again, or is it not necessary?
There may be, and if so, it would be in the coming weeks.
Okay.
We have been able to work really well with the city on being able to get the information that we need without having to be physically on site. It really helps us be able to get through some of the information that we need. So it may not be necessary at this point for fiscal year 18 and 19 work.
Okay. Well, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is art grant It's part of the Walton Group Development Project.
Mayor, the agenda shows the next item is public hearing on the fiscal year 21 budget amendment.
I'm sorry. I dropped the line. Okay, sorry. Public hearing on the fiscal 21 budget amendments at this time. My apologies. You all had hopefully a couple of days to look over these numbers. Some of them were in one format, but the numbers basically are pretty much the way they were. There were a couple pages that might have missed. That's why we redid the print.
What are they? The ones that were in?
You have them right there.
Yeah, but I just got it.
The format made it 9 pages versus 12 pages. So mine, as far as I know, was the only one that had like 7 pages. But we decided to print them all again in the new format of 12 pages. They're the same numbers, everything that you had. But mine was missing 2 pages and we realized that. So if you had one on your desk at 9 pages, that was you had 2 different formats. It helped me out. One format versus for 9 pages and one was a different format.
It was a top by the margins.
It's
Top and bottom
margins.
margins were different.
So, the report that I had given you, what was that, Friday, last Friday, is this, if you're looking at the same numbers, it's just larger now, so it's more pages.
If we're looking at the same number, what was the purpose of adding more pages?
We
To
didn't
make it
add
larger.
We enlarged it where you could read it better.
Yeah, we didn't add pages, it just, the different format made it a little easier to read. The reason we redid it was because mine, when it printed out, was missing pages, and she had already printed one that we were looking at, and I said, can we just do all new? So, it's the same information, just a different format, easier to look at, easier to read, nothing hidden.
The numbers are bigger.
So use the 12 pages. So at any rate, if you looked at the one that was 9 pages, if you have questions, they're going to correlate with the exact same item numbers, revenue numbers, expenditure numbers are all going to be the same. So
If you want, I can go ahead and get it started.
that would be great.
Okay. Well, the reason for the budget amendment, a couple of different reasons. One, because we're halfway through fiscal year 21, and it's really just kind of time to take a look at everything to see where we are, see where we finished the actual calendar year, still being halfway through our fiscal year. And if you remember during budget hearings earlier this year, we had discussed at that time, that's when, COVID really first started kind of coming out. We didn't really know what was going on. It was hard for us to judge revenues. It was going to be hard to judge expenditures. Just a lot of unknowns when we were doing budget hearings for the fiscal year 21. So now that we're halfway through the fiscal year, we just wanted to sit down and kind of take a look at where we stood. And when the mayor and I were going over the numbers, the different accounts, looking at the revenue versus what we had budgeted or had hoped that we would be receiving, some things we have received more than what we had expected, but as expected, as predicted, we're down in several different accounts for revenues. A lot of this is really due because of COVID and just businesses being shut down. With businesses being shut down, a lot of the development and planning and zoning and permitting that we were hoping for by this time almost a year ago, has just not happened. Not that we don't have a lot of, as you know, we have a lot of development coming up. We've got a lot of developments that are in the works. We're waiting on several different final plats to come in, but they're all coming in later than what we had originally anticipated. So we had to adjust the revenue, quite a bit, just to try to get all of this corrected and see where we really stood as a city. With that being said, you can see from the budget that is in front of you, you have 4 different columns, and this is as of 12/30. So this is as of Thursday, last week. And because the office was closed on Friday, so which I guess would be kind of our end of the calendar year. So the first column is the year-to-date as of 12/30. The second column, the orange column, that is the budget currently for the FY21. The third column is the percent used of that budget as of 12/30. And then the final column, the green, is the proposed amended budget. I was trying to make it as easy as possible to follow, to have questions. Your pages are numbered, your rows are numbered, so that way we can all follow each other pretty easily. If it is in red on the very last column, that means that something has changed, whether it is an increase or a decrease, but that number has changed. If it's black, then that budget number is not changing. If there are any questions, I can kind of give you the highlights for the revenue, and kind of what we saw over the last 6 months of this fiscal year. I'd be more than happy to give you an overview, or I know you guys have had a week to review it if you have any questions, however you guys want to handle it.
Well, our revenues are down total $174,610, not including the CARES Act grant that we received, which is $107,400. So if we add that back in, so if it wasn't for the CARES Act grant that we received, we'd be down $282,010.
Correct.
So obviously we got to do some amendments.
Yes. Just to highlight a couple of the revenue line items. One of the big ones is the property tax, which is your row number 1. We had originally budgeted $305,000 in property taxes. Based on the property tax bills that we sent out for this calendar year, we are only going to be collecting $255,000. So that difference is significantly because we assumed that a lot more homes would be built and the property value of Statham residential within city limits would have increased significantly more. So because of the decline or the slowing down of residential, we decided to decrease that number to what we actually sent out in property tax bills this year. Number 2, the CARES grant, which is row number 4, the $107,000. We did not budget it because that wasn't anything that we were expecting. So that certainly does help offset some of the revenue that we had lost because of COVID. So that was very helpful. The insurance premium tax, which is row number 15, that usually has stayed right around $185,000 to $190,000 for the last several years, but we saw a $10,000 jump this current year, which was great. That means an extra $10,000 that we were not budgeting. So there must be more insurance companies within city limits to offset that cost. The fines, which is line number 30, those are municipal court fines, and you can see that there is a significant decrease, 50%, in fines for this current fiscal year as of 12/30, and that is largely due because there were 2 months in a row that we did not have court at all. And there were some other factors in for the 50% decline, but the majority of that is because we did not have court for an entire 2 months. I think it was May and June, I believe, or no, June and July. we did not have court. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Sorry, Chief, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So that is a significant cut in our budget. And, now that, we have been back up and running, we're back to what the city has historically seen in the last couple of years is an average monthly fines that we've collected. So hopefully we usually sit around between $11,000 and $12,000 in fines per month. That seems to be about our average and has been our average for the last couple of years. But now moving forward, we can project to see that much, but we only have 6 months left. So I had to adjust the fines based on what we felt would be a good, solid number by the end of this fiscal year. Moving on to page 2, line number 40, the sale of assets. Now, the sale of assets is considered a revenue. Now, council has voted to approve $6,000 in the sale of assets for fiscal year 21, but at the time that we approved the budget, last fiscal year, at that time, we didn't really know what was going on with the house on Broad Street. It was still kind of up in the air. We knew we wanted to do something with it. We knew we wanted to sell it, but we just didn't have anything solidified. So we did not include that as any sort of a sale of asset or revenue. With that being said, we did end up selling 1921 Broad Street for $105,000, I believe. 108. Okay. $108,000. So that sale of assets is included in this revenue amount.
Well, that was what we cleared. We sold it for 120, but they take out their,
Well, right.
yeah.
Correct.
So we cleared 108,
Right.
but that's part of it.
Another part of the sale of assets is the police vehicle that was totaled in July, at the end of July, I think it was July 31st.
Yes.
So because that vehicle was totaled by a former officer who's no longer employed with the city, but that just kind of put us in a bind on a couple of different levels, which we'll get to on the expenditure side of the amended budget. But the amount that the city received that vehicle was right at $28,000 was the value of that vehicle being totaled. And that pretty much included everything. I mean, it included all of the upfitting, the lights, all the equipment. So that is put into also sale of assets. And then Public Works had also sold a couple of different items. We sold an old Crown Vic. We sold one of the old Public Works Ford Explorer. I think it was a 2005 or 2006 Ford Explorer. So all of these items that were former assets of the city, we have sold and made into revenue. So that number has significantly increased for this fiscal year. So that's also helped with just to help offset the loss of other revenue.
I had a quick question about the sale of assets.
Yes, sir.
So we got $108,000 for the house,
Correct.
we cleared it. Is there any way we could earmark those funds for, say we wanted to do something, say we wanted to bring the police department to City Hall, or we want to expand City Hall, or we want to bring Public Works over here, or we want to build a new building, or whatever. Can we earmark those funds to make sure they go in the right place, or how does that work?
The short of it is no. And the reason why is because it is an asset of the city, and when we sell an asset, it goes directly into the general fund.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that the money that, and I know this is kind of confusing, so I'm trying to figure out how to explain it, but once the money goes into the general fund, it is used everywhere else in the budget, right? So it is disposable income. Mm-hmm. And so the sale of the house is already put into the general fund of the city and being used somewhere else. Now, with that being said, if council so chooses at some point, maybe for the next fiscal year, that we want to build a utility complex, and we want to place the house, City Hall, and the police department, and the Public Works Department all in one. Now, that revenue is not going to be there specifically because it's not earmarked. It is just a sale of an asset, and it goes into the general fund cash, we'll say. And, but if that's something that you would like to do, then we have to just budget that amount, for the next fiscal year, so.
And to put a legal point on it, Georgia law requires that every city have a balanced budget, meaning revenues must meet expenditures. Now, when the revenue comes in, something has to go on the expense side to offset that. The closest you could come to that would be to put it into a general reserve fund. That's considered a legitimate, fund balance. That's considered a legitimate expense item, but unless you're planning on expanding current fiscal year, you couldn't really earmark it for that project.
Right, okay.
So when the motion was made to sell the house, and that the motion was specifically made that the funds go to wherever we decide to make permanent home for our police department, for those funds to go there, that motion was approved by all of us. So how does that not fit into? I'm just curious.
Honestly, I would have to probably go back and review that council meeting to now I think whether or not, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that was actually part of the motion. I think it was more of a comment about what had hoped to be done with the money, with the sale of the house. On the other side of that is, I don't think that it could be part of a motion to earmark those funds for something specific.
No, because that would effectuate a budget amendment, and you have to go through the budget amendment process, including a public hearing in order to do that. But as I recall that motion, I recall there being discussion about the use of the money once it goes.
I'm just surprised it wasn't brought up at that particular time. Why nothing was said?
I don't, because, and again, this is just my recollection, we have to go back and look at the minutes. I don't recall there being a motion to approve the sale and to allocate the proceeds to the expansion of the police department. I remember us discussing various uses of money if we approve it, but I don't recall that being a specific contingency in the motion. It was just a motion to approve the contract.
Okay.
I think that's the way I remember it also.
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Discussed what we were going to do with it. And, we kind of had ideas about what we could do with those funds, but
I'd like to think if that was in the motion, I would have said that's not a proper motion.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If it wasn't, then I would have definitely wanted somebody to say something. But that's not a problem. I mean, that's what you're here for. Call me out. Didn't mean to call you out. No, I mean, that was meant in a funny way. You just can't.
That's all legal.
One item that, or actually a couple of different items, you'll see on the revenue side that there was a decrease significantly is water taps, which is actually line 79. We had originally budgeted $324,000, but we're changing that to $120,000. And then sewer taps, which is line 83, we originally budgeted $240,000, and we're taking that down to $170,000. Again, when we were discussing the budget earlier this year, we were under the impression that several of the developments that we had working at that time were going to be halfway done at this point. So because that did not occur, we had to decrease those.
we were in the middle of a moratorium at the time, though.
Yeah, that also, because the moratorium didn't lift until July 1st.
Well, no, this is the budget we're working from, so it was after the moratorium.
Now, we approved this budget June before the moratorium was lifted, yes. So, but we just kind of assumed, hey, the moratorium's going to be lifted in a couple of weeks at this point, so we were ready to kind of rock and roll and get everything going. and then everything else happened with COVID, and so. Did anybody have any other questions regarding revenue? Moving on to page 3, the legislative account, which is account 110. We have decreased that budget from $106,000 down to almost $88,000. And I said anything in the red, you can see what was changed. There is one more. Now, I am going to have a couple of recommendations for changes as we're going through this, and that's just in the last week. Conversations have happened between the mayor and myself, or a council member, and just needing to maybe make a couple of adjustments. But one adjustment for under legislative, which is line 112, the beautification and tree committee. We have already spent, actually we've overspent as of today. We had to take down a couple of trees that are not showing in the year-to-date, but we would like to increase the budget from $8,000 to $16,000 for the beautification and tree committee. With that being said, as of today, we've just spent another $5,500 on top of the $4,100. So technically, we are already over budget on that. That leaves us with about another $7,000 to use for the remainder of the year. But I do know that there were some maybe projects that the tree committee would like to do before the end of this fiscal year. And I also know that there are a couple of other trees that need to be removed due to safety hazards, which would also be included in this budget because of the Tree City, the city being a Tree City USA designation now. So, other than that line item, there wouldn't be anything else that I would recommend to alter, but I would recommend changing the beautification and tree committee from $8,000 to $16,000 versus the $11,000 that we had originally put in there last week.
Does anybody know where the tree removal, where those funds were taken out of before the tree committee was formed?
Actually, it was intended to be put in there. And the reason why we had intended to put any tree removal in the beautification and tree committee, because of the requirements for the city to maintain that status, we have to spend a certain amount of dollars per capita, so per resident. I think it's either $2 or $3 per resident.
Two per resident.
Okay.
And we estimated that to come up with 6,000
Correct.
plus another 2.
Right.
I think what his question is in previous
Right.
administrative
Oh,
years,
okay. Yes,
they
in
took it
previous
out of-
years, it was in Public Works.
Okay,
And
that's
we
what I
just,
thought.
yes, and we just moved it from Public Works into this tree committee because it would help us maintain that Tree City USA status.
and that's part of that ordinance, if I
Right.
understand right, is removal of pruning
Right.
and
Removal of trees, debris, planting.
now,
Yeah.
limb removal
Right.
and leaf removal, that's still being done by Public Works.
Right.
But if a tree needs to be removed because of blight, because of infestation, whatever, or safety,
Right.
that's all under that ordinance.
Right.
May I ask a question, please? What happens in the event of a catastrophic weather event?
That was also one of the reasons why we added, instead of 11,000, because we are supposed to have some ice. Part of that is, well, what do you want me to say?
Well, no, I don't
It
understand how.
still comes under pruning and or removal for whatever reason.
Right, but I mean theoretically, if we had a catastrophic weather event come through, then the budget for the tree and beautification committee could be in the red. Is that correct? So I don't understand why the two would be, why is that being taken out of the beautification? Because it's, like I said, one.
Well,
Part of the
also like
beautification and tree committee is that ordinance that was passed by the council.
I don't recall having tree removal. I guess I have to
It's
see
part
that.
of, being part of the Tree City USA each year, we have to spend X amount of dollars.
Okay.
And the X amount of dollars encompasses tree removal, planting trees, trimming trees, cleaning up tree debris. All of that is included in what we have to spend a year. So if the city was already allocating X amount of dollars for tree removal, but it was just under Public Works, we decided to move it into the tree committee, because we're already spending the money, and if we just add that to the tree committee's budget, then we know that we're never gonna have to worry, oh crap, we've gotta spend $6,000 this year because we have to in order to maintain our status. We know that we'll already do it with something that we're already spending the money on.
I think moving forward, I would entertain the idea of having tree removal put back into Public Works, and tree committee and beautification be for tree committee and beautification, not for removal, because
But then you're not
what Mr. Bogenreiter is
following,
saying
I
is
know what
that,
he's saying, but you're not
is that
following
variable-
that ordinance. If you
we
read
can make
the
an-
ordinance,
can we make an amendment to the
then
ordinance?
it doesn't fit the Tree City.
Right, that's a requirement for the
USA
Tree
ordinance.
City USA.
It is part of that ordinance that you agreed to. So you can't have it both ways. It's gonna happen one way or the other. Now, in past, we didn't have that ordinance. So the removal was done by the city,
Right.
by Public Works. You have that ordinance now, and the ordinance says for tree removal, beautification, and planting.
Okay,
And so,
maybe we can put emergency tree removal out.
Counselor,
So the answer to the question, there's two questions that are actually being asked. One is a specific one is a general one. I'll start with the specific one. The specific one, the mayor is correct, the ordinance does require that the expenditures related to the Tree City USA designation of the tree committee include planting, removal, and beautification or trimming or what have you. Creating a separate line item makes it easier for us to show the Tree City USA organization that we are spending the requirement. So if you put it under Public Works, from an audit perspective, it makes it a lot harder for us to show the Tree City USA organization that we are doing exactly what is required of us under the ordinance. But to answer the citizen's question about what if there's a catastrophic weather event, that is a more general question that I think everybody needs to understand what a fiscal year budget for a municipality is. It is not a absolute, chiseled in stone document. It is something that is constantly changing. And when you adopt it, it is a best guess. And as the year goes on, you're constantly updating numbers to reflect what actually happens. And so if a catastrophic weather event happens, it's not like the money isn't there. It just means that at some point, we're gonna have to make the numbers balance. And that may mean that we have to make cuts elsewhere as the year goes on. We have to make those decisions in real time. But ultimately, it'll come back before the council to make sure that the numbers balance out.
My only point is that at this point in the game, all we've done is remove trees. There's no beautification or planting whatsoever been done and the budget's shot. I want to prevent that moving forward. That's all. We're missing the objective of being a tree city, and all the work that we've done on the tree committee is getting blown past us because of emergency tree removal. And I understand we have audits, we have, reasons that trees need to come down. I get all that. What I'm gonna make sure is that, we make sure and allocate enough funds, even put some emergency tree removal funds in the budget moving forward for the one in June.
To make you ease your mind just a little bit, Councilman, with the additional $5,000 from the 11,000 up to the 16 that I'm recommending.
Yes.
Part of the reason why I wanted to increase that is to allow, yes, I know we're probably gonna have to take take down 1 or 2 more trees before the end of this fiscal year at
Right.
some point, you know, but I guess in my mind, in my budget number, my number mind, I'm thinking that if I know that we have already spent $9,000 and that leaves us with another $7,000, I'm thinking that 2 trees, maybe $5,000, that's gonna leave a couple of $1,000s for tree planting for this fiscal year. So for the next 6 months, I'm thinking in my budget mind that you're gonna have about $2,000 to spend on, planting trees around the city as part of the tree committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that the, you know, you put the funds, you know, you made adjustments there. I
Yeah, so,
saw
I
that.
guess, the way that I figured, about $2,500,
Right.
you know, per tree for
Yeah.
not for a huge tree, but for a smaller tree, an average size, you know, 50-foot tree might cost about $2,500 to take down. We get 2 trees, and that'll leave about $2,000 for tree planting and other beautification for the
Okay.
next 6 months.
Yeah.
That was my, in here.
So moving forward, we'll have a better idea of how much beautification.
And I can always
trees,
break that
planting,
down
all
even more.
costs. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so,
once we get the numbers, hopefully we'll have numbers at budget time of our census numbers, then automatically this number goes up because to meet that ordinance, we have to put $2 per capita.
Right.
So that's automatically gonna increase, okay?
Right.
Some of it is neglect in the past, there's stuff that has been let go for whatever reason, not enough money, you know, not aware of it. I mean, things are being brought to our attention that might not have been brought, forward before. So, you know, if we're made aware of it, we have to act, especially if it's a threat to someone's property or livelihood. So,
I think on this particular line item, we have potentially spent this much money in the past cutting trees anyway, and not realized because it hadn't been put into the actual community line item. So I feel pretty confident that we probably have spent quite a bit taking down trees as needed. It just hasn't been noticed because it hasn't been put in this line item. Much like Councilman McCormick, I would like to do planting of trees and make sure that we do have funds there available. I think if we change this number to 16, that would give us enough to plant what we'd hope to get done this year before the next fiscal year budget. But going forward, I think we have to keep an eye on this particular line item so that we know we need to budget accordingly for taking down trees and planting trees.
and during budget hearings, once we start, budget hearings for the next fiscal year, which is really only a couple of months away, when we should really, think about starting, I would like to start, even at the end of February. So if you would like for your, committee, at your next meeting, you know, even if you could put it down on paper for me, so I can keep it in my folder until we, you know, work through the next budget, let me know how much you would like to see for fiscal year '22 for tree planting, or to plant bushes, or for whatever beautification, and then write that dollar amount down, and then
Yeah.
let's figure out tree, removal, and that.
Right, right.
So if you can provide me during, the budget process, specifically what the committee would like to see done for fiscal year '22, by all means, I encourage you
Yeah.
to do that, so we can specifically, list those items, so there wouldn't be any confusion come next year.
So the quick math on this, if we spent $4,100 already, we got like you said, a $5,500 bill.
$5,500.
So that's $9,600. What is the average, what does it cost on average to take down a tree?
1,500.
Well, you know, and I budgeted, you know, $2,500, 2 more trees within the next 6 months that we would need to remove.
So $2,500 for both of them?
No, each,
Each?
so $5,000.
So if you're looking at $5,000, that's $14,600,
Right,
and we're budgeting $16,000.
right.
That leaves us $1,400.
That's gonna buy us like 10 bags of mulch.
There are organizations that will donate trees. I know Rotary does. So those are things that y'all need to consider.
how many trees did you buy last year and what was that price?
Well, it was 20.
Okay, and you didn't, yeah, I think you had 3,000 available and you didn't spend 3,000. What is the plan this year? because I haven't seen
We have
anything.
14 trees
Yeah, I
planted.
haven't seen anything come across my desk,
We have 14
okay,
planned.
so,
They're about 150 a piece.
So that comes out to 2,100. That's a difference of about $700. What would be left over after we pay the bills versus buying any potential trees?
Now, to my knowledge, there aren't any trees that need to be taken down, removed at this point, because we just took down the couple of trees that were necessary, which is the $5,500 invoice that we just received today. So to my knowledge, there isn't anything else that's pressing that we need to have removed. Not saying that there are, not to my knowledge.
and that's, I believe, a total of 6 trees in that 5,500.
Okay, so like I said, the $5,000 that I was budgeting, was really just in case.
If we bump that number to 17 instead of 16, that would cover the trees that the committee would like to purchase. And be able to take down other diseased trees.
I will say, if you would like to bump that up to 17,000, that basically means we'd have to, adjust that $1,000 somewhere else on another line item. And if you notice on travel, which is, probably at line 117, there's $5,000 budgeted for travel. Now, I did not do anything with that, that's what was budgeted, and that's still what is budgeted. But, the travel would be for hotel stays if council elected to go to any conventions in the next 6 months. With that being said, I'm going to probably guess that GMA convention, which happens in Savannah at the end of each June, which would be considered this current fiscal year, will probably not happen. Because we had some upcoming training, and Sandra was actually scheduled to go to Jekyll Island for municipal clerks training in February, and that has just been canceled. Well, it's available online now, but nothing, no person-to-person contact. So I'm going to assume the GMA is probably going to be canceled again this year, just like it was last year. So if you would like to, take some of the $5,000 travel budget and apply that to the beautification and tree committee, I'd say that we're probably going to be pretty safe.
That's a safe bet.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
So would you like to take the $5,000 down to 3 and add 2,000 to the committee for 18,000? You want to take 1,000?
I wouldn't have a problem doing the two personally, because I don't feel that we're gonna, I think everything's gonna be virtual for training.
I believe you're correct. Mr. McCormick, would you be okay with that?
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, so I'll take 5,000 down to 3,000, and I'll put 18,000 total as the amended budget for the beautification and tree committee. Good?
Great, yeah.
All right. Moving on. General admin. That is account number 150. One item that I do need to adjust is line number 130, which is salaries.
Where are you at? I'm sorry.
Just move down here.
Line 130, under salaries, under
Okay.
general administration. I had originally budgeted $165,000, but that was when we had one more additional full-time staff in the office. So I adjusted that down to 110. I adjusted that down too much. When I went back and I recalculated our part-time person, Michelle, I didn't quite add it up as much as I should, so I actually need to bump that up to 128,000. So it's still down from 165, but I need to bump that up from 110 to 128. That is the only adjustment that I have to recommend to make out of general admin.
So the 165 was that was your original guesstimate, or the original budget amount.
Correct.
We've spent 49,
Correct.
For half a year.
right, up to this point.
Part of the changes also is that previously Sandra's payroll was, some of it was placed in general admin and some of it was placed in water because she handled utility billing as well as some other general admin duties, so we actually split her salary. You'll also see that with the Public Works Department when we moved down a little bit further, and even the Water Department. A lot of it was just split between departments, which also meant between funds. So as a way to try to eliminate any potential confusion and just for auditing purposes, we cleaned that up. So I have since moved Sandra all into general admin, which is going to reflect on the second half of this fiscal year.
Oh, okay.
So that's also, now part of her salary was included in the 49, but now we're adding all of her to the salaries of general admin.
So the difference is just you making up for the part-time, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay.
Did anybody have any questions about anything in general admin? Okay. I don't think there's anything that I would like to highlight on general admin. There is a $10,000 contingency under general admin, and so far we could leave that there, or moving along throughout the budget amendment. If there's something that needs to be increased or decreased, we can always adjust the contingency of the general admin. Moving along, finance administration, there's only 2 accounts under that department, and that's just accounting and audit. Pretty self-explanatory. Municipal court, and you can see in red the changes that we've had to make in municipal court.
Line 201, I discussed this with you,
Okay.
or 201,
201?
I discussed it with you earlier, it's underneath municipal court.
Yes.
Can you, find out whose salaries come out of that, or just to double check on that for me?
Yes.
Is it just Tracy?
Honestly, I need to pull that out and look at it, because Tracy's salary is also broken up between
Right.
court and police.
Right.
So part of the $15,000 that we have already spent for the year, I need to look to see if that's only Tracy or if that's Tracy and part of Julie. I don't remember how we set up Julie, whether she's kind of 50-50 or 75-25. So I need to, I just need, Councilman Venable wanted me to find out specifically how those 2 employees were coded.
Well, now, the months that we don't do court, do they still get paid?
Yes, because it's still part of their salary, their
Okay.
annual salary.
Just to clarify, I'm not specifically asking about those 2 employees, we're jumping from 20,800 to 32,800, and if that's 1 employee, or if that's 2 employees, that's kind of what I was asking.
So far,
Honestly, I believe that the way that I allocated that is 2 employees. It is both Julie and Tracy.
Okay.
But,
Julie wasn't part of the original
Right.
no,
I was just
budget
getting ready to
this
say
year.
that.
So,
No.
We,
is that where this is going off?
well, we budgeted for 1 or 2 additional, sorry, go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, now, Julie, when she came on board, that was in the absence when Rick Norman, when he was there, he left, and so I gave that police spot up to have a support service. So that's from the police side. That's where that budget came from.
But I thought that when Julie came on board, it was so that Tracy could do more of the court.
And that is correct. Since Julie have on board, Tracy have moved up and Nathan is focusing on court, but nothing happened to change as far as the budget. She's still getting paid.
I'm just saying that so Julie wouldn't have anything to do with court.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, if you double 15.7, you're gonna come out pretty doggone close to 32.8 anyway.
Oh, you don't too big?
Not right here, no. So far, we spent 15.7. So you
Right.
double 15.7, and,
And if that's the case, why did we budget 28?
But also understand that Tracy, the budget hasn't been changed. She's still getting paid half of the police salary as well as half of the court salary. So even with Julie coming on, we never changed, anything with Tracy. So that may be.
The main reason I was asking is if it's 50-50 for one employee, that employee is making
Right,
$65,600.
just in the court.
If we bump that to 32.8.
By the next, by the regular meeting, you know, I'll have that figured out. So we may, that 32,800 may be adjusted, but it may have to go to the police salary if that's the way that it's set up in the system. So
I'm not trying to give you a hard time, it's
No, I
just
know,
we're
I
trying to
understand.
figure it out ourselves.
Yeah.
With what's going where and who's to what.
So I just need to get with Sandra, and I just need to look at payroll and see how that's broken up.
Okay.
By, the regular meeting, that 32,800 will either stay the same, and I'll give you the reason why. It'll change, and I'll give you the reason why. Either way, that same dollar amount is gonna have to stay in either court salary, or it's gonna have to be moved to police salary, depending on how the employee is set up in the system. That's an easy fix either way, Joe.
Okay.
Did anybody have any other questions in court? Okay, moving on to the police department. I believe that there might be a few changes within the police department budget, proposed amended budget. Is there any council member that had any immediate questions or concerns about the police department amended budget?
Well, I've talked with the chief about this today, and it's definitely not an easy decision because I'm a big part of the police department here, and hopefully everyone knows that. My biggest concern right now with adding to the salaries, and again, I did sit down and speak with the chief about this, is that we're not sure what's going to happen the first part of this year. And by bumping these salaries up, we were looking at possibly hiring 3 additional police officers.
Correct.
The last thing I want to do is hire 3 additional police officers and turn around and have to cut the budget in July and potentially lay somebody off. And that's the reason why I requested for us to at least wait, see where we were with our finances, see what's going to go on with the federal and state government, and revisit this for our next fiscal budget. So that being said, talking with you today, we found out that we can keep everybody on payroll with $330,000. It was $350 budgeted. If we drop that number down from $390 to $330, and with the other changes that you already proposed, that money would cover that. That's just my idea, but now, that being said, we do have to outfit the police department with a new vehicle. And because one was wrecked, and that amendment is in here as well. There's been a request for an additional vehicle and for it to be upfitted. I have no problem personally with purchasing the second vehicle and go ahead and getting it upfitted. and paying for it directly without, financing it. We save on finance charges, and, there may be another CARES Act in the work, who knows? That could potentially cover that if we go ahead and purchase those outright instead of financing. To me, it makes financial sense to do it if we're gonna purchase a vehicle.
Now, to add to what you said, we have two problems. One is we have an officer driving a vehicle that is non-pursuit capable. If he drives it like grandma back and forth to church, it is still non-pursuit. So that means that vehicle being used for police duty, normal run-of-the-mill, is going to need more maintenance. We also have the vehicle that was wrecked July 31st and was totaled. So we need to replace that. We have an officer down here that is driving her own personal vehicle, and we are reimbursing her approximately $112 a week in miles. So you do the math, and we keep wearing her vehicle out, we're forcing her to buy another vehicle sooner than she might like. So that is why I think two vehicles are a necessity. One, because we're getting a police officer in a vehicle that they should be driving and not their personal. And another one, because it is not pursuit capable and is not going to stand the day-to-day operations unless he drives it like a little old lady, and then you're still going to have problems. So that's my take on it, and why I think that we need to really consider two vehicles for that reason.
Well, I'm kinda like you though, if we do these vehicles completely outfitted, then buying them outright would save a lot of money. And chances are there is gonna be probably another CARES Act being, just because these vaccinations out, nobody still knows what's gonna come for the rest of this year.
And I think, and when the original CARES grant was offered, and then I had to do an audit, and I had to send them all kinds of documentation on what we qualified for to be reimbursed for. And at that point in time, we had just purchased the two Interceptors that the chief is driving, and then the other that Captain Davis is driving. And knowing that vehicles were included as part of the reimbursement, I tried to, initially, I sent them the invoices for the actual purchase price of the vehicle. And part of the audit on their end was they asked, they wanted to see the full purchase price of the vehicle, and I told her that we were actually leasing it, and she said the only amount that was going to be included in the CARES grant reimbursement was the monthly payments that we had paid for that set amount of period. So had we actually purchased the vehicles outright, then we would have received about $60,000 more in CARES grant. But because we did not purchase them outright and we've only paid monthly payments for 6 months, that's all we got. We got about,
I'm personally okay with two fully outfitted vehicles for the police department myself.
I just want to add one thing, brought to my attention. When we talk about pursuit rated vehicles, when I came on board here, none of the vehicles were pursuit rated. Not one. Both trucks are the white Taurus, neither one of those pursuit rated. The vehicles that we just purchased are pursuit rated.
and the vehicles that you're looking at, they are pursuit rated.
That's correct.
It comes down to, for me, risk versus reward. If we're gonna have to buy vehicles, versus this year or next year, it would make more sense to me personally if we got the funds available to go ahead and buy them before, we're looking at, again, I don't know what the federal government's going to do, but if we're going to have to buy them anyway, and there's a good chance that we may have another stimulus package coming out where we get reimbursed for it, it would make more sense to buy it, have that opportunity if it arises, because we don't have to buy them anyway.
Well, we got $108,000 from the sale of a house we
Right.
could use, so.
Chief, could you tell council about the vehicles that you have the data actually found and the cost associated with those two vehicles?
The vehicles we were looking to purchase, if we were granted the opportunity to do so, they were gonna be 2020 Ford Explorer Utilities Interceptors, which are what I'm driving. We're wanting to go with the white, same paint scheme I've got on it now, and keep everything more uniform than it has been in the past. The full upfit on my vehicle, graphics and everything, was roughly in the ballpark of about $44,000. That's cages, lights, vehicles, push bumpers, graphics and everything.
So, what is that, just say $90,000 for two fully equipped vehicles. Now, I would like to say, in the police department budget currently, if you go to, on page 5, line 258, you'll see repairs and maintenance, vehicles and equipment, the amended proposed budget, $26,850. That is an increase from $7,500. Well, when the chief and I sat down and we discussed the proposed amended budget, that included about, what is that, $18,000. I think we included $18,000 to upfit one and partially a second vehicle. So part of the $26,850, that would be essentially $20,000 would go towards upfitting a vehicle.
And also, due to the total bill that we have, I'm not sure, I know the lights, and so we have lights and everything that, from the total bill that we add to one of the new bills would save money.
And you took them off, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yes.
So that's already just waiting to be installed.
Yeah, I think you took them off before they.
Before they came and picked it up.
I'm sorry, we were actually, I don't know what the outcome of the white Fords is gonna be, so we actually took the things off that gray Fords in hopes that we could save the city money and transfer it to the white car,
Well,
instead of having to go buy it all brand new again.
you know, I get the pursuit ready concept, but if you got admin officers, they don't need a pursuit ready car. So you can make some admin, you can shift some admin stuff around and make it work. I don't want, you know, I want us to utilize everything we have.
You know, yes, that's good, but the problem that we run into, because we don't have the manpower, all those administration catch calls. There's a lot of times I'm here from 9 in the morning to 12 at night. I'm still putting those type of hours. Until we're able to cover, well, they can cover 24 hours with what citizens need. We only covering up to 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning. And a lot of times I'm pulling 8, 9, sometimes 11 hours a day or longer. You know, the Detective Cruz, she's coming in now in the mornings because the county have really been helping us a whole lot. The county is catching calls in the city. And so we pull her out of the office. She's now tasked for patrol duty from 7 in the morning to 12 noon. Then when one of the guys come on, they'll take it from there. So we try to spread it around as much as we can to get the coverage that we need.
Well, Chief,
Yes, ma'am.
as much as I don't like you working that much, I would think that we're looking at here right now, what do you need right now? You need 2 cars?
Yes, ma'am. 2 cars would be great.
And then when we look at the budget, which will start in a couple months,
Yes, ma'am.
maybe we look at, you know, when we see where we're at as far as the new, you know, like the Statham coming in, people starting to buy more houses, when we see where we're standing at that point, it's like pulling the cart before the horse. If you need 2 cars right now, you know,
Let's get the cars on.
it's like you're asking for too much.
I know, I'm sorry, but, you know, I have, the vision I have for this department, guys,
I'm just
it's beyond, we have a great group of guys. We want this 24-hour coverage. I think citizens in the community need it, but we're gonna have to have the cars and the people.
Right, well, like I'm saying, one step in front of the other, we're gonna obviously, if you want cars now, let's get 2 police
Yes, ma'am.
cars. And then when we go when you sit down with Ms. April with the budget, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
maybe put your officers in at that point.
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate your support.
I don't want you to be upset with me, because I said that.
No, we just, we understand that it costs a lot of money, the police department, police station, no matter where, it's gonna be one of the most expensive, biggest expense. You know, we do get a little, frustrated sometimes, but we do have so many open gaps there. And, we have guys come in to try to overlap some of the time to give the community a little bit more. A lot of stuff that we're having going on, we're tracking it between the hours of 12 midnight to 4 or 5 in the morning. It's almost vulnerable spots, but we're not covered. And the county may be on the other side of Winder. And, speaking to a couple of the command staff members, they're giving us what they can, but they're shorthanded as well. And I just really think sooner or later, we're gonna have to figure out what direction we need to go. We have moved the schedule around different ways. We changed the schedule, just to try to get more coverage in. It's not safe to have one officer on the road, at night.
You're right.
I won't assign one officer to be out here overnight by itself. I know that's what they used to do. Things have changed in the last 6, 7, 8 months you look around.
Yeah, because there's gonna be times where an officer might pull somebody over that might need backup immediately.
Constantly.
Sometimes you get that feeling, you know, you don't want nobody getting shot, you know. Everybody watches, you know, cop shows, we know that, so.
But no, we appreciate anything that we can get or we can have. We're very grateful for that. And I think Ms. April, she's actually, I've sat down and talked to her several times on, can we do this, can we do that? And she's like, oh, no, well, we could try, you know, so she is trying as well. And, you know, and I know each and every one of y'all is trying to make sure that we do have the tools we need. But, we're definitely gonna need it sooner or later.
Right.
So how much do the trucks, to the interceptors cost without the upfit? Because I need to budget those separately.
I believe, I'd have to go back and look at the papers, but I believe it was 36.9 or somewhere right around 36, 37. My car has great lights on it, but I went with emptier light package and a lot of other AC county or whatnot, so to speak. That way we would try to keep it as close to 40 as we could.
So that's what, council would like to do is to budget 80,000. That leaves,
Well, no, it's, what's the upfit now? I mean, I'm so sorry.
Roughly
Is that what it's
it's
called?
about 44,000, including the upfit.
Okay, so around 90,000.
Yes, so total, but the portion of the upfitting is actually in the vehicle repair and maintenance, line item. So that's already budgeted per, you know, so to speak. We would just need to change the $16,200 in vehicles to 80.
Yeah.
Again, we're going to have to buy one,
Yeah.
for one with county. We know that, so,
Well, if we got
my
the money-
thinking on it again is if we got the money, let's go ahead and buy them, hope that when the CARES Act comes in. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but,
I think that's probably got a good chance of that happening.
Yeah, and over the course of we're paying on vehicles for a 5-year loan, we're gonna save $7,000 in interest.
Mhm.
And then we'll be done buying vehicles for a minute,
For a while.
thank God.
Yeah, but no more vehicles.
just don't wreck anymore.
I go back when we lost the other vehicle.
Okay, y'all get really fast vehicles, the granny ones, y'all make sure, you know.
No, we keep the speed
Are
on
you
control.
taking your defensive driving test?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I'm very hard on, we wanna drive safe.
okay.
I do want to say, I read the reports, I appreciate the reports, I know what you guys are up against.
Yeah.
We do, and it's like, my husband and I, we see you guys coming around all the time. And once you pass my house, the light go, we did it.
Speaking of your husband, he needs a new truck himself.
Yeah, she'll get right on
I'll
that.
be right on that, yeah.
I'm sorry? No, our SLOSS is already, designated to go to our sewer bond.
Until 2033.
Did anybody have any other questions about police, or can we continue to move on?
Move on.
Yeah, let's move on, we get, are we
Okay,
present?
The next department is Public Works. And, after looking at the expenditures for the Public Works Department, we're actually gonna be, let's see, we are gonna be decreasing that budget. The numbers changed a little bit, but, we do have a couple of recommendations for changes.
April, where you at again?
I'm on page 6,
Gotcha,
the bottom of page 6.
gotcha.
One decrease is in the salary from 266 down to 200,000. And that is also due to, not commingling, Public Works, partially in the Water Department, partially in the Public Works Department. So currently, the way that we have it set up is, the Public Works Director comes out of the Water Department, and then the Public Works guys are all gonna be included in this salary under Public Works.
Does that also have to do with Jordan now over from?
Jordan was, I think he was kinda half and half, I think all the guys were just about
Oh,
half
I
and
thought
half.
he was all water.
But now he is now.
He's all water?
He's all water, yes.
Just for budgeting purposes.
It's just for
Okay,
budget.
okay.
It all comes out of the general
Okay, I
fund in
can
the
say,
end.
did something happen?
No,
Yeah, good,
just trying
okay.
to keep it from
Okay,
splitting everybody. You just say, well, part of your time is here and part of your time is here.
okay.
Right.
And it creates more of a nightmare for auditing
Just auditing
purposes.
purposes, so we're just
Okay.
trying to clean some stuff up as we
All right,
go along.
that's fine, I just,
Let's see here. Moving over on page 7, there's also a decrease in workers' comp. The cost for workers' comp, when we go to do the upcoming year, they really kind of base it on salaries, what we pay in salaries and past claims that we've had against the city under workers' comp. But the reason why, you'll see across the board in just about all the departments, workers' comp has decreased. But the good thing is, the reason for those decreases is because each year we have a workers' compensation audit, and they ask, they have to send several documents to the workers' comp fund. They review the audit, they review what I send them, and then they determine on whether or not there's going to be an increase that next year or there's going to be a decrease. And fortunately, we received a decrease, and we actually received a refund check for $14,000. With that being said, I was able to lower the cost of the workers' comp for the second half of this year because of that audit. So that's kind of pat on the back for the guys, specifically the police department and the public works department, because that's the most cost of workers' comp claims. And those have significantly went down this last year. So good job.
Yes, thank you.
An increase that after speaking with Councilman Venable just a few hours ago, is that we had talked about the sidewalk and crosswalk repair. And moving along in the budget, you'll see other changes, but there was a suggestion to take the sidewalk and crosswalk repair from $14,275 to $39,275. There's going to be some cuts moving along in the budget that offset that increase, and we'll get to those as well. But there was a recommendation to bump that up to $39,275.
$39,275.
There's also a suggested $2,000 increase on vehicle repairs and maintenance on line 330, from $10,000 to $12,000.
I'm sorry, can you say?
Yeah, we were,
Okay, on line 330, repairs and maintenance for vehicles and equipment. This is for the Public Works Department, to increase that from $10,000 to $12,000. And then on line 363, on page 7, sidewalks and crosswalk repairs.
That was the 39,275.
to 39,275
That was,
from 14.
And that comes from discussion that we've had recently at council meetings about striping and lighted crosswalks, signage, that sort of thing.
Correct. Other than that, those are the major changes of that department. Now you will see a decrease on capital, which is the line right before 359. The original budgeted amount was $40,000, and that has been taken down to $10,000. And that was originally budgeted for a new tornado siren, but the council had elected to purchase a refurbished one, and that cost took us from about in between $30,000 and $40,000 down to $3,800. The reason why we're leaving up to $10,000 is in that particular line item is to pay to have it installed. So
Yeah, we're gonna have crane
right.
expenses, electrical,
right.
water tower, it's, you
We
know,
left
it's pretty involved.
when is that happening?
We left
I talked to
$6,200 in
the
there.
electrician the other day, and we put a plan, he went on Christmas, I went on Christmas, we, you know, made an inclement weather.
Now,
We have the siren, but
I
it's,
foresee that being done by the end of February.
Yes, the amount that it's gonna cost to actually install it is, do we have to increase something, or do we have?
Yes, just for the cost of install, and we left $6,200 in there for the cost of install.
is that going to be enough for labor and additional $6,200?
I'll get with him,
Are we,
I'll get with him tomorrow, and,
Should
I'll
we
let
probably
him.
amend it before the next meeting?
Should we be getting
We're
bids?
gonna have, the thing about the siren is we're gonna have to have, radios, we're gonna have to have a cell dialer, we're gonna have, you know, a comm box set up, you know, where the chief, the mayor, and somebody at City Hall can actually actuate the siren, remotely. Like, they can basically dial into it and say, tornado, they can say fallout, they can say.
We need to mark that as a question mark now.
yeah, just a question about that, and I'm sorry, because a lot of things we have to have bids on, so we've left a certain amount for the electrical, but is that something we have to get bids on?
Between 2,500 and it might be $10,000, and I think you're right, Counselor. Between $2,500 and $10,000, it's not required to get sealed bids, but it would be required for us to go and solicit 3 different quotes for the installation of the siren.
So somebody will have to write a spec sheet.
I'm sorry.
Somebody will have to write a spec sheet.
Right, and then we would have to go out and solicit the bids and, or, you know, we could, I don't even think it's required to be advertised officially. I think we just need to get 3 bids, you know, from vendors who are qualified to install the siren.
Well, there's another issue, there's only, 2 or 3 vendors in the whole United States that are authorized to install the siren, and one of them is luckily he's in Alabama, so it's not, Jeb McCrane, he's not that far away, but he stays booked like, you know, pretty solid, so he's kind of hard to get hold of, but, we have reached out to him. He does know that we're doing the siren, but it's kind of hard to get a hold of because there's only a handful of people in the whole U.S. Unless you go with Federal Signal, and Federal Signal is going to want us to spend the whole $40,000, and we don't need to spend $40,000 on siren. So.
Right. Yeah. Next week when Jordan is able to get back to the office, we can definitely have him do a little bit of research on that as well and see what, you know, different companies, including your gentleman that you know, we can start working on that and getting some quotes.
Yeah, we definitely need to get that installed before it's gonna be.
$200 to $5,000. $200 to $5,000 is 3 quotes. 5,000 to 25,000 is through what we call an informal bid process.
So we must get bids taken. basically, we're gonna have to.
It doesn't require publication, we just have to come up with an invitation to bid, and then send it out through normal channels, and then whoever bids bids.
So just basically have enough in the budget, just in case it's up there.
Just,
Right.
right, the one thing I will say is this though, in deciding which of those categories it falls into, it's perfectly appropriate for someone, whether it be Jordan, the mayor, whoever it may be, department head, to call someone, get an initial estimate, and based on wherever that initial estimate is, let that be kind of the guiding principle for which of these it falls into. So,
Okay.
if Dwight calls the gentleman tomorrow, and the gentleman says it'll cost him $4,500, we're under $5,000, 3 quotes
Okay.
is all you need.
Got it.
We can have that by next meeting.
Yeah.
when we vote on
Yeah, I
this.
can have that by the council meeting.
Are you required, I know, I'm thinking school system, to go for lowest bid?
No,
No.
So they depend,
okay. We have the option, we're supposed to choose the most qualified person for that. You know, obviously you want to go with the most reasonable, bid or quote that you receive, but sometimes they're not the most qualified for that particular job. So the cities have the flexibility to be able to make that choice based on the bids and the qualifications of that person.
I would call other municipalities and see who put it theirs in, that's what I would do.
Everybody's gone digital, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Everybody's gone digital, and that's not, it doesn't work. For some of the elderly people in our community that don't have a smartphone, might be out in the yard, you never know.
Well, we can definitely solicit that, and whoever responds, and we'll just go from there. I mean, that's what our ordinance says to do, so we'll ask and see what kind of response we get, I guess.
Next page, page 8. At the top of that is capital improvement, that's Fund 320. Right now, originally we had budgeted $307,000 for paved streets, and with the recommended cuts, I recommend taking that down to $200,000. However, with that being said, I would now suggest or recommend to take some of that and put that into the police vehicles. Now, I know that there are 2 projects that Mayor and Council had previously talked about getting done, and that one project is, what is?
Commercial drive,
Yes, and then the other is,
out here in front of Castro.
yes. And between those 2 projects, I believe, we're thinking around
About $55,000.
$55,000
For
for
both.
the 2 projects.
And with costs, if you figure in a higher cost from when we got those bids, I wouldn't think more than 65 for the 2. So, to be, just to be on the safe side, to have some contingency of, about 10%. So,
I don't know, you tell me. Whatever that difference is, I think that we need to move that over into the police vehicles. So if you think that it's going to cost, just to be safe, $65,000 for the 2 projects, we need to add that to the already $94,000 that we have already spent on that line item. I guess so, I would suggest taking the $200,000 down to,
159, is that right?
150, 145,
159, is that
or I'm
right?
sorry, 155?
159.
Sure.
Make up my mind.
I don't know, you guys tell me.
93 and 65 would be 158, and we got another $900 in there, so that would be roughly 159, if my math's right, total. So,
I would
round it
have
to
an easy number
160.
and say 160.
the 160, that gives $40,000 you could put towards paying off the police vehicle.
I have a question. How do you designate where you're going to spend your money on paved streets? Do you have a system that you use as far as when they come up for possibly being repaved, or how do you designate that?
These, not to jump in over the mayor, but these 2, we inherited quite a few streets that have problems, and these 2 are pretty significant problems, along with the one that Mayor just had completed down here on Broad Street. Obviously, it was caving in. We've got a drainage issue out here in front of the Castos. if you drive over, you see that, and then Commercial Drive is bad as well. So right now, we're just putting out fires.
Okay. Good question.
Yes. Next budget year though, that is something that council is going to be discussing at the beginning of the budget process, are the upcoming projects, road and street projects that they would like to see done in the next, in the next fiscal year. Yes. I don't have any other changes on that. Sewer, which is the next, the next one down, there's really not a whole lot of change on that. There may be some significant changes depending on what council decides to do with the ARC grant. But honestly, at this point, it's neither here nor there because you haven't voted on it yet. So I just left it as is. I haven't changed anything with the ARC grant. So the revenue is the same because the money's there, and then the expenditures are the same because that's where it's allocated for restricted cash. We did add an additional $10,000 to sewer lift stations, which is line 411. And that's just after discussions and meetings with Jordan. The spring has had some repair work. This year, I know that a pump needs to be replaced. So there are certain items like that. So we had added an additional $10,000 for the repair and maintenance of this lift station. Under the next department, sewer lines, and you can see in red the changes that were made for this particular department. Overall, there was just about a $30,000 increase under sewer lines. The majority of that is repair and maintenance. Moving down on page 9, I believe, water, which is Department 443. There is an increase in salary, which before the next council meeting, I'm also going to double check that to make sure that I don't have more than one person going in there. But from what I discussed with the mayor earlier, that position is Jordan. And that is also our part-time water operator, class 2. So that is our Lou. So that is Lou and Jordan's salary for the second half of this year.
And this is just pulling all of Jordan's salary underneath water, is that correct?
At least for the remainder of this fiscal year. Now, next fiscal year, it may be easier for council to decide on salaries if we just have everybody under public works. And I'm totally fine with that. With the exception of Lou, he would still need to remain in water because that's strictly what he does. But,
I think whatever would be really for all its purposes was better for you.
Just in one place.
There you go.
That would be great.
All right, so underneath salaries, just to clarify, none of these increases in salaries are any new positions, right?
No, sir.
Okay.
You can go through and see the increases or the decreases throughout the water department. Did anybody have any questions, recommendations, increases, decreases under water?
I will clarify part of the reason for the increase. For instance, 450, we've had several water breaks. So Jordan and I felt that it was prudent to increase that a little bit. If you look at 460, that has also changed, but that's because we haven't really put out a lot at this point. However, we do anticipate more water breaks. So we don't want to take that down to a ridiculous number and then go, oops, missed that one. So we had a major one up here. We had one that took 4 days to correct at the corner down here at the crosswalk. They've definitely had their share, so just clarifying that.
Now, April, under 450, under professional services, it seems like we budgeted 40,000, and we've only spent a little over 1,000. And can you tell me, you know?
Yes, professional services is, engineering services. So the reason why I didn't change professional services is because we have a lot of upcoming projects that the city is gonna need engineering services for, to include well development. So depending on what all the city wants to do in the next 6 months as far as any sort of well development or sewer project, then we would need to pay for those services. So I didn't touch that just because we don't know how much work we're gonna be doing in the next.
That's
Would
cool.
that include one of the things coming up tonight to
Yeah.
discuss?
Yes.
Hydrogeological services?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that word.
On the water purchase, we're already around $150,000. Do we typically see large spikes in the summer, because we're not there yet?
We based this really off of what we did this past summer because, we were purchasing more, we had purchased more water this last summer than we ever had before because the plant wasn't running. So, really, we just took the same numbers as this last summer, and then just kind of, computed that into a total number of water purchased. We actually increased it more than last year. Now, I didn't touch it, I didn't decrease it, I didn't increase it, I left it 340, and that's because we actually increased it pretty significantly from last year's budget.
So at the rate we're going.
So the rate we're going,
Yeah.
I feel, yes, I feel,
Yeah.
and Jordan feels comfortable sticking with what we had originally budgeted.
You have a full one.
Oh, you're fine, ask questions.
No, I was just getting ready to say, at the rate we're going with what we've already spent, and by the end of the year, we'll probably under budget.
Now,
Hopefully.
is
So
this,
kudos to you for that one.
this number is mainly from Winder, correct, where we're getting it the
We get it from
cheapest?
Barrow County, don't we?
There is some at Barrow,
Barrow County.
but I think we were getting, according to Jordan, the majority through Winder.
What is the
Or,
review on that?
Winder cut us back like November, December, and we had to pull more from the county, but under normal circumstances, we pull more from Winder.
Right.
It is cheaper.
When is that, the contract renewal up? I mean, are we expecting a rate increase, do we know?
Well,
I know the mayor and,
I just met with them this week, and they wanted some numbers. Of course, the county was upset because we had an agreement with them and we had an agreement with Winder, and they felt that Winder was undercutting them. But as I explained to them, let's face it, whenever the county says $1 for 1,000 gallons at up to 30,000, and then jumps to $3.50 for 1,000 gallons for 30,001 and up, and you're at $5.15 for the first 1,000 up to 30 and jump to $5.50, I basically told them, what would you do? And they said, we'd go to Winder, but that's not fair to us. So they're willing to go back and negotiate and look at what we need, and based on our December numbers, we pulled 944,000. Total last year, 28,210,000 gallons. So based on that, I think Jordan said they could base it on we can do, the spring can do about 3 million gallon a month. So they would have to figure it on 9 million a month. And then what would they do? But it can't be $5.15 or $5.50 per 1,000 because they're pricing themselves out of the market. But there again, that's why we need to do what's gonna make this city more independent.
Exploration.
So,
But the short of it now for the budget is 342 covers until the next budget.
Correct.
All right.
The only other increase that we have for that department is, line 500, under software. We had originally budgeted 17,300, but we would like to increase that to $20,800. This software purchase is also for water valve mapping, to map all of our sewer lines, to map all of our water lines, and for also any sort of like leak detection. I believe if there's any repair or maintenance that needs to be done, that this software can alert us in real time of an incident. So the increase from $17,300 to $20,800 is due to additional equipment that Jordan is requesting that needs to be included with the software purchase that we would be purchasing.
On that note, we had discussed this and budgeted for it at the original budget hearing before we ever got to the amendments. We just under budgeted basically.
Just a little bit, yes. And that was after speaking with Jordan today.
This basically gives a low-cost solution to a GIS for the city of Statham, something we never had. So the idea behind it is they can take coordinate points of their water and sewer lines and import that into a web-based GIS. And then you'll know where your water and sewer lines are, you'll know where your valves are just by pulling it up on a computer instead of having to go and hopefully find them out somewhere. So this was already something that we had discussed, it was under budgeted, unfortunately.
What all this would give us is the software. We already have the tablets. So it would be the software to load on there, a good GPS, so it's rugged, and a pin finder. So there'd be all the components, and then we wouldn't have to go outside and pay a contractor to do the work we could do in-house.
So this takes data from the meters also, don't it?
Well, that's a separate one. We already got that, and that has, in my opinion, is gonna pay for itself before the end of the fiscal year. Because what used to take 3 days to do meter reading can be done in about 4 hours. Yeah. And then all you have is a handful of walkabouts.
Okay.
That they have to physically go out and look because they're commercial buildings.
Our guys would be
And
open,
they're
So
not
we're changing those out.
so our guys
Yeah,
would be open to do a lot of other things.
Oh, yeah, Bobby,
Yeah.
Bobby used to be pretty much 3 days, he was out of the picture.
Yeah.
He can pick that thing up, leave this office at 9 o'clock and be back at 11:30 and have 94%, 95% done.
Wow.
Is our water bill gonna go down?
You don't
For you,
use much water yet.
So I asked.
Well,
Don't hurt that.
On that note, though, the city purchasing this system, it gives real-time information once we get it all up and running and get everything mapped. And as staff changes, as elected officials change, this will be readily available for whoever takes over. There's no hoping you can find them out somewhere in the filing cabinets.
Exactly. All right,
All right.
water lines,
Water lines, we actually decreased that overall budget, from 69,000 down to 65,500. And you can see where those changes have come from, highlighted in red. Under spring, that budget has actually increased from $20,250 to $40,750. A lot of the increase is due to repairs and maintenance. I know that Jordan, after speaking with Jordan last week when we were going over the budget amendments and different projects and any potential issues that could arise in the next 6 months, he was not concerned about the spring, that's not the right word, but he wanted to be more prepared for the spring. He didn't feel that the last budget was quite enough to protect that asset. So we wanted to increase that in certain areas under repairs and maintenance, under professional services. So we added to that budget. Moving along on page 11, the community center, we did decrease that budget by about $2,000. Recreation, we decreased that from $15,000 down to $7,000. We have spent $4,600 on this first half of the year, and if you remember during the budget process, we approved that amount because we had intended to have concerts, maybe do a movie on the lawn, and then COVID happened and we didn't do anything except for Halloween and then the Christmas. So because we don't really have anything going on in the next 6 months, we decided to go ahead and decrease that budget down to $7,000, but it still leaves a couple $1,000 just in case if something comes up. Under carts, moving down to line 580, we increased that budget by $600 overall, and it's because we decreased the utilities and increased the repairs and maintenance. But overall, it did increase that budget by $600. Moving along on the library has, we're going to need to increase the budget for the library if council so chooses. The repairs and maintenance, we've already went over budget, and the council approved the budget of $250 for regular repairs and maintenance, and we've spent $316 so far this year. Just to be on the safe side, and we had increased that to $1,000 for regular repairs and maintenance. Now this would be if because the city is still, the city owns buildings, and we would be responsible for certain repairs and maintenance. If the lights go out, we have to change light bulbs, filters, if the AC or unit needs repaired, those types of items. And I think last week or the week before, something was going on with the AC, and we had to get it repaired anyway. So that dollar amount isn't actually in here yet. We have not received the invoice. So we've already used that $1,000. Communications. Now the city pays for the library phone system, and because we changed new phones this year, that expenditure has increased across the board for everybody. We've got new and better phone systems. We were having a lot of issues here at City Hall, specifically with drop calls. We couldn't hear the customer couldn't hear us, and it was due to the faulty phone system. So the increase in the communications budget across the board in the departments is because the phone system repair and upgrade. One thing that we did under budget for was utilities in the library, and the city pays for the library's utilities. Council approved $4,800 in utility expenses for the library. I initially had requested just to leave that the same. However, looking at their utility bills, now that they have expanded into the old police department, it probably needs to be increased to $6,300 for the rest of the year.
That would add 1,500 to it.
From $4,800 to $6,300.
Yeah.
When are they supposed to occupy the new apartment?
What their goal is the end of March. When it happens is
End of June.
when it happens.
They were late getting breaking ground in the first place.
So that was what the deadline that they put on this contractor was March 31st.
Okay.
When the contractor finishes, it'll be done.
Well, we're giving them a larger building, so it makes sense that utilities are going to increase.
Yeah.
Right?
Basically, they're taking over what was the police department. So the way that we initially had figured that up was we were using the police department's past utility bills to kind of come up with what maybe the whole item, the whole space would cost. We were just off. And maybe because they run water more, because they got more activity over there, I don't know, but, we guesstimated wrong. And that would be me. I guesstimated wrong.
Part of the utilities, Sandra told me that it was all lumped together because it was basically one building, and then she took a percentage for police department and percentage for library.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's all one, and of course, no division there. and you got a whole lot more open air space to heat, it's reasonable to figure you're gonna have higher heating bill with 20-foot ceilings or whatever, and also cooling. So 15, should just about cover it for the next 6 months.
Jackson or Georgetown, I'm sorry, who's the supplier, Jackson or Georgetown, Georgia Power?
Georgia Power to the library.
On the last page, page 12, under inspections, line 14, 13, 613, professional services. We originally budgeted $49,000. We have actually only spent $5,400. We just received a bill this week for November, and they tend to bill about 2 months behind. And that was $411. So that actually puts us at about $6,000 for the first half of this year. The reason why it's down so significantly is because Bureau Veritas, who handles all of our inspections, that is all based on a permit application request. And when our permits are down, then they're not required to be here, and therefore the city doesn't have to pay as much. With that being said, I also want to point out that that even though it shows as an expense, it's more of a decrease in revenue. So the city charges application fees for all of these different permits, whether it's a mechanical, plumbing, electrical, a development permit, footing, so on and so forth. And the way that the agreement is with Bureau Veritas is we don't pay them any sort of monthly fee. We don't pay them for professional service like we do EMI. They get, based on the current contract, they receive 70% of all of the revenue that we collect for all of the inspections that they perform. So if we charge somebody $100 for an inspection, they get $70, we get $30. So I did decrease that from $49,000 down to $25,000 for the remainder of this year, because there hasn't been a lot of activity, and even if we really start bumping it up, that still leaves, almost $20,000 for the next 6 months, and that would be really moving with inspections. The only other adjustment that I would recommend, or that I would like to recommend, is under professional services on line 641. Now, once all of these amended numbers get put into the system, there might be something that, because I didn't, maybe I wrote down one and not the other, but I've written everybody's comments down now. I might have to adjust it a little bit, the bottom line number to balance. But I would like to increase line 641 from $18,000 to $23,000. I'd like to increase that $5,000 more dollars. And that is largely in part because now that is Jerry White. Jerry White comes out of the Planning and Zoning Department. He's the only one that comes out of that Planning and Zoning Department. But because we have so many developments that are currently in the works, and we're also talking about other areas of planning and zoning, I just would feel a little bit better if we would increase that expenditure $5,000 based on all of the things that we've got working right now. Which also increases the legal ads. So I increased that from $500 to $2,000.
So April, anything that's currently not balancing your planning, anything that's currently not balanced, where it zeroes out, are you planning to pull from contingency line items?
Yes, I'll probably pull it from contingency, particularly under departments that don't really use a contingency as much, like general admin. We have it in there, have it built in there, but if there's any sort of overage or anything like that, then I would definitely pull from contingency first, yes. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Maybe not comments, just questions?
No.
Okay. Well, if not, today is my son's 15th birthday, and I would really like to get home to go and say hi to him.
Oh, wow.
So, if there are no other questions or comments, then, I will be here bright-eyed and bushy-tailed by, no later than 8:17 a.m.
But tell Abbott happy birthday.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you for the time.
All right.
Do I require a closed, public hearing?
Yes, there needs to be a motion to close the public hearing.
May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, I make a motion to close the public hearing for the budget amendment.
Second. I have a second. All those in favor? All right. Unanimous. Next on the agenda is the art grant for the Walton Group Development. I got it right that time. Didn't have my finger over it. So, we did have a little bit of discussion on earlier, and was decided to table it until this meeting. So I did put together some numbers that support my idea as to why it would be in the city's best interest to walk away from this. There is no grant money that is sitting in the bank right now. The money that is sitting in the bank, approximately $313,000, is city's monies that was set aside to go towards this project. Now, up to this point, there were things ordered by the Walton Group and went through EMI, billed to the city, and the city got the money from Walton Group, and it went around to the tune of $400,000+. Now, as we discussed a little earlier, you know, we're buying water that the city can't produce. So if you look at that coming from Winder, we pay $1 for every 1,000 up to 30,000 gallons, $3.50 for every 1,000 that is 30,000 and 1 gallon and above. When we get ours from the county, which we had to do towards the end of the year, the last couple of months, maybe last 2.5 months, we were paying $5.15 per 1,000 for the first 30,000 and $5.50 per 1,000 for the next that was above 30,000 gallons. So at this point, for 6 months, we have paid out basically $150,000 that has gone out, and potentially we're looking at $340,000, and that is figuring on the low end of using Winder's fee versus using the county. So if Winder decides that they can't supply us, then we fall back to the county. But going on the low side, the city's going to spend $340,000 over the course of the 12 months in this fiscal year to purchase water that we can't produce. And I personally and professionally believe that $340,000 goes a long way to well exploration for this city to make us more independent. My big fear, looking at the numbers and talking to developers, potentially in the next 18 months, we're looking at the need for approximately 120,000 gallons capacity more going into the sewer plant that we're going to have to pay for. And then we're looking at, as I said earlier, about 9 million gallons a month. So if we add another, I figure, we're looking at about 76 homes going in at Lakes of Statham. Ellington Farms is just a baby's breath away from getting approved for 58 homes. That's just down the road. There is about 20 more homes till it's built out on Providence. And we've got roughly 100 homes that are on our supply system that's across 316, just down from the country club. So if you look at all of just those homes, and that's not counting, you know, looking at the Moore property, looking at our Jack properties, looking at another one that's down between Jefferson and 211, there's a potential for 1,000 homes in the next 5 years to come to Statham. And if we can't produce the water now, if we don't get a grip on this now, and use the money for well exploration now, there's only one choice that I can see coming 3 years down the road. If we get half of what could hit us, and we can't produce it, it's kind of like borrowing yourself out of debt. Can't do it. Can't happen. Don't have the groundwork in place now, and we can't produce enough water. We can do about 100,000 gallons out of the spring, and that's pushing our permit. Our permit says 115,000, I believe, but you can't run at full capacity. We just replaced not too long ago one of those pumps to the tune of about $3,500 plus installation. So there's, I guess, 2 pumps up there. So you blow 2 pumps in 1 year because you run full capacity, and there's $7,000 plus installation. So it adds salt to the wound, insult to injury, however you want to discuss it. But the bottom line is, if we're going to pay for $340,000 over the course of just 1 year, if we add another 100 homes next year, what does that amount? We add another 250 homes 6 months later, what does that amount? So exponentially, it goes up and up and up. And then what's our choice? We say the county, we can't do it. We're buying more water than we're producing. We can't resell it at any profit, so we turn everything over to the county, and there goes Statham. We're no longer a city. We're annexed into the county. So that's my concern as your mayor. I don't get a vote. I'll open it for discussion.
Mayor, I got quite a bit to say on this. A lot of it I said before, but tonight we just looked at our budget, and Statham's pretty small when it comes to property taxes and other fees and taxes. And if you look at our revenues, tonight we just discussed taking our property taxes down from a projected $305,000 down to $255,000. $255,000 doesn't get us very far. The one thing that keeps Statham and able to maintain running Statham, whether it's police department, public works, even this office and us, is our water. If we don't have our water, we don't have anything to run the city. I think it's very important that we become self-sufficient, especially now more than ever, because we're looking at growth, whether it's growth that the city council allows in, or growth just outside the city limits that the county has allowed. It's still in our water. Now, there's potential, certainly over on the Walton Group development track, to have something very big. I've discussed this with numerous people. We sent in development committees about this. And I don't think it's a terrible idea if it was for development. As far as I know, it's not. It's a tract of land. We were told by, it was Mr. Sparrow from that was representing Walton Group in the meeting I sent in on, that they were not planning to develop it, that they were looking to sell the property. So it brings me to the next point of this ARC grant. I asked, as of today, is that is the grant even available? Most grants have time limits. I don't know for sure, but I was told it was set to expire somewhere around March or April because there was extension that was requested by EMI, and they got the extension. And I don't have the paper in front of me, so I can't say for certain, but I believe it's set to expire sometime early this year. So that money, that matching grant money, probably wouldn't be available to us, even if we wanted to move forward with this. Where does that leave us? It leaves us with $313,000 sitting in the bank where it's been sitting for quite some time. This project's been worked on and worked on. I'm not sure what's being done on it. I don't know if any sewer lines have been installed. I don't know if there's any movement on the lift station. I can't seem to find that information anywhere. But it started in 2012.
I can provide a little bit of background on that. So as of right now, there's been no pipe installation. EMI is in the process, or they've reached the point where it's at easement acquisition phase. There's going to be, I believe, 7 easements that were required that were not Walton Group easements. Properties not owned or controlled by Walton. And they sent a proposal to the city saying that for that phase, they wanted, I think, Mayor, was it 9,000?
Yes.
And additional amount?
EMI wanted us to authorize $9,000 of professional fees so that they could do easement acquisition. That's the next phase. So that's where the status of the project is.
So it was started in 2012. Here we are in 2021, and we're still gathering easements.
Yes.
I think by moving that money over to well exploration, whatever we want to call it, I was told about a year and a half ago by Jordan that he had a rough estimate from EMI that it would cost us approximately $450,000 to drill a well. We have $312,000 sitting in the bank, sitting there. We're spending $350,000 a year. That's all I got to say.
Well, I said in the last meeting that I thought that we should take that money and move on studying, do a topographical study for a well. That Statham needed to become self-sufficient, that all the money that we're paying out in water could be money that we're bringing in the city. And I'm agreeing with the mayor, and I'm agreeing with Gary on this one, 100%.
I had some concerns, previously about using this grant money for something different than what it was intended. Meaning that when we decide to use it, it's gone, and if there was a development that started out there, you know, we'd be sitting there hanging because we did something different with the funds. But after looking tonight at the budget and then looking at how much we spend on water and looking at all of the data instead of just a little bit of it, I believe it's a good idea to go explore for water as well.
Well, I'm going to throw another thing out that I've recently discovered in investigation. And there is a gentleman who wants to develop out on Glen Jackson Road. Now that's county property, so he has to negotiate with the county. The county says he can do 2 homes per acre, but he wants to put it on water and sewage. His company, his backers, are willing, A, pay for the pump station because it's going to need a lift station to get it onto our sewer. And 2, they're willing to pay to get that tied into our sewer and water system. So the city's not going to pay for it. And then at approximately 300 homes, and we get $6,000 for the sewer tap, $3,000 for a water tap. That's $9,000 per home at 300 homes. Is a considerable amount of money, and we're not putting in the lift station. Now the city would have to maintain it, which we do our other lift stations. So if somebody wants to buy that huge tract of land out there and develop it, and they can't afford to put in a $500,000 lift station,
right,
then they can't afford that tract of land. My opinion.
Right. Exactly correct.
Strictly my opinion, so. But I just want to throw that out there, that developers know that if they cannot do a gravity flow on a city's sewer system, they know that there's a need for, they're not going to generally volunteer and say, well, hey, we'll pay for that. They'll say, well, we need a lift station. How are you going to help us out? So that's part of the leverage, I guess, that the city has. You want to develop here and you know what is necessary to tie in to the sewer and the water, then you're willing to put that in your configuration. So this gentleman said he knows it's going to take a lift station because he talked to Jordan, and there's no way to tie it into our sewer system without doing that. It has to have a lift station. So
That's like that piece of property that, for the Walton Group, it lines along some mobile home park with a handful of mobile homes. And it's like any other business, that mobile home park belongs to somebody, and they were talking about we should take some of that money and put a lift station. Well, it's not that I don't have a heart and I don't want to do for other people, that's not it, but that's this man's business, and if it was my business, and if I came to the mayor, I says, look, I've got my business over here, will you put a lift station for me? Chances are he's gonna tell me no. You know, any type of business has to be supporting for the business owner. So that's why I was saying the $313,000 could go a long way with making Statham self-sufficient.
Well, I just have a question about the Walton Development Group. Do they exist anymore? I thought at one time they went bankrupt.
They exist. Even a bankrupt entity continues to exist.
Okay, I didn't know if they continue.
Yes, they filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but they reorganized and reorganized. They're still a viable entity.
Well, I didn't know if I hadn't heard a whole lot of activity from them, so.
That's part of the reason why they're now in sell mode, not development mode. Although they were never, they had 3 or 4 true developments around the country. They were always, for the most part, their business model was always buy, rezone, negotiate with municipalities or counties, increase value, and flip. They had a nominal division arm so that they could come in and sell their rezonings, but now they're almost exclusively just unload assets.
and I think recently they did in Arcade or Nicholson, they just got rid of 2 pieces of property that they purchased or got involved with similar to this, because it was, I believe, 4 municipalities, Arcade and Nicholson, Statham, and I want to say Comer. So they already.
It was Comer Tequila Arcade.
Okay. So they recently did unload some property that, they were able to find a buyer, and it was bought with the idea of developing it. And so, at any rate, any other input or questions?
The last thing I'll say is, if by some reason somehow this property was developed, guess what? We're gonna have to buy water to support it. Can't support what we have already.
All right, no other questions, so we'll move on to item 2, qualifying fees. This is to set the 2021 election qualification fees for the 3 at-large seats that will be open. I believe right now we do, is it 10% of, according to, 3%, I'm sorry, 3% of the salary, which is 180 for a council member.
I thought it was 189, not 80.
I think I paid $360.
Well, you had to pay more.
Do you remember what you paid, Kathy? Was it 180 or 189?
I think it's 186.
186.
It was in there, yeah, it was in there somewhere.
Okay, so
180.
180?
180 and the mayor
Ooh.
was 360.
We get secret. All righty then.
Maybe they charge me tax.
Credit card fee.
Charged you more because they liked you. So that is something I guess that we will vote on. Is there a reason to increase that amount or leave it
I
as
don't think we
is?
can increase it unless we increase the salary.
Okay,
That's right. The way, the qualifying fee is actually set by state law. We set the salary, which affects what the fee is. So, it's basically approving the salary for the next council member, and that's the qualifying fee that you set.
That's why you can't change, a new salary can't be
Midterm,
set
correct.
midterm, it has to be the election year.
Well, it can be any time before the election, but yes, you cannot change the salary of a city council member. It only can take effect after the new election cycle.
Gotcha.
So you'll need a motion to approve the qualifying fee of $180 for the 3 open seats at the next business meeting. No, at the next meeting, not
Council meeting.
at the council meeting, not
this was just a discussion.
Oh.
That's it. I think he set you up. All right, so moving on, move on real quick. Item number 3, the hydrogeological services for location, which was part of what you had brought up. Now, we have one in here that is for $20,000. We put this out for bid. We only had 2 respondents. This one in particular that's in our packet is for $20,000. Basically, what the city would be paying for is 2 gentlemen, perfectly qualified to do this topographical and geological, and I think they use drones and all kinds of toys. The other one was $50,000 to do the same thing. The big difference was you're buying a whole lot of brick and mortar and a big office in downtown Atlanta, and the other one is a more local individual, and it's just 2 of them that do the whole thing. Both are considered equally capable, but one you're buying the labor, and the other one you're buying the building. So I did not include it. I meant to, but this was the choice out of 2. This was the one I thought we would get the best bang for the buck. So, and that would be to try to figure out possibly the best 3 or the possible best 5 locations where we might be able to drill for water and come up with the best supply.
That's, groundwater services?
Yes.
That's good, that's good.
So that is what's in your packet. At this point, any citizen input? Yes.
I just have one thing, and I guess this may pertain to, I don't know, necessarily pertaining to a line item that maybe I'm not seeing here in the budget. This, I guess, is relating to my interest in the city beautification and keeping the downtown area and the city proper in, I guess, in respectable condition. I know that the city, at one point this past summer, had hired 1 and perhaps 2 gentlemen to do routine cleanup of the downtown area. And I guess at least, I guess both of them were terminated or relieved the positions for whatever reasons. I think probably because of underperformance. Recently, it's, the downtown area and a lot of areas in the city in general is starting to accumulate a lot of trash and garbage and refuse. I recently spoke to the Dollar General, which at this point looks like a off-ramp off of I-20 in Atlanta, and asked them if they have a plan for cleaning up their refuse. So I don't know if those salaries were included in here somewhere, or if the city has a plan to replace those gentlemen or reallocate man-hours to be doing some sort of garbage cleanup or maintenance of the downtown area. 'Cause I think at this point, it's definitely suffering.
Well, to answer your inquiry, bit two, one was community service.
Okay.
So once he had met his 40 hours of community service, which he did over the course of a couple of weeks, he left. I offered the guy a job. Apparently he has some kind of Social Security or whatever, because the guy is a hard worker. He does not want to do something that's going to jeopardize his Social Security income. So unless you pay him under the table, we can't do that as a municipality. The other gentleman was let go because there was more citizen complaints than there were compliments. As far as the pickup, I have one guy on staff that it's been slow the last 2 days, and he has done almost nothing but pick up garbage. And he can turn around on that 1 mile, start at that end at our city limits, go down to the other end, go back and check himself. And he just had this happen the other day, and somebody threw 2 bags of garbage out and 3 pallets. So he had it all cleaned up, all the way down. So, yeah, you know, until we all take a pride in the city and do what we need to do, you know, it's an uphill struggle. I leave this office to walk down to the police department every couple of days, and I take a garbage bag with me and those little grippers, and I pick up between here and Subway probably enough to fill a typical waste paper basket that you would have at your desk. And from there down to the police department, again, that much or more. We have garbage cans throughout this city, and people they take their mask off when they come outside, right there's the garbage can, throw it on the ground. I pick up 5 masks a day. Some are cloth, some are paper, but I pick up on average of 5 every day and put them in the garbage. And they'll throw them right beside. They'll sit on a bench beside a garbage can, on a bench. They'll drink half of their soda from Subway and sit it down and walk away. They'll set their soda bottles and their water bottles on a business's window. I feel for it, I do.
Okay, well,
But I do this, and I don't get paid to do this. I get paid to be a mayor, but when I'm out walking, I take a garbage bag with me.
right.
And this gentleman did 2 full days of garbage pickup as a city worker, and can go right back up that mile, and you got 2 bags of garbage and 3 pallets. So I don't know. You tell me the answer, because
Well,
I don't know the answer.
I would think the answer would be to have a regimented schedule with at least 1 or 2 of our hired maintenance employees to do it perhaps on a
Every
more
Monday and
routine
Friday,
basis.
so that the garbage is picked up
I
Friday to
don't-
get into the weekend, and Monday after a weekend of people walking around. I can tell you that does happen, because we buy the garbage bags. Now, if he's pulled off because there has to be work on the water or whatever, I mean, he can't dedicate 12 hours a day at it. He can't dedicate 8 hours, because you don't know what's going to happen. But I do know he spent the majority of his last 2 days, because it's been slow, and he don't sit idle. He goes out and so many garbage bags, and comes back in and gets another load of garbage bags. So we're trying. We really are. But until citizens take pride and not throw their crap out because they don't want to pay for garbage removal at their house, and the city can foot that bill, it's a struggle. We're working at it. That's all I can tell you. I'd like to hire 2 more on the street department, but as Councilman Venable said, to hire somebody now and then have to lay them off in July, and especially if they leave a job to come here because they want to work here, that's very full.
Yeah.
I can't do that to somebody.
So we don't have
when
to-
we know where we're at in our budget, and I think in 3 months, this council and the city will have a better understanding of where we're at, and how things are gonna progress, absolutely, I'd like to hire 2 more people on the street department, but when it comes to these flower beds, I can tell you what I'd like to see, because I'm a guy. You put me out there and weed, I can almost guarantee you, and that lady back there will tell you, I'll mow it off before I have to figure out what's weeds and what's flowers, because I'm not a horticulturist, so I don't know. And so it was kind of a shame that that individual, he didn't have a clue, and nobody would show him. We're all guys, so we go out there and say, well, I think that's a weed, and I go, and then somebody says, no, that's not a weed, that's a plant. So, okay, well, how about this one? So it's a guessing game, but we are working at it.
So those positions weren't a line item or weren't necessarily budgeted, they weren't cut from the budget, in other words?
At this point, well, they probably were, because we did cut down on some of that, but we only really had one for that individual. The other one, like I said, was work detail, because he got in trouble and the court said you have to do community service. And I wish we could hire him, because we've had him 3 different times working for the city, and I mean, to tell you, the guy will work.
Under that type of situation, I would hire him.
No, they said that's the way he always was. He is a good worker, but he don't want to work for the city.
Okay, that's right.
I said, and that's what I said to him. Well, I hope you get in trouble again real soon. So.
Kurt, I mean, I feel, I'm gonna tell you, I kind of feel where you're coming from. I've had citizens get a hold of me about this cemetery down here, and my husband and I twice have got together, you know, the community to go down here, and the first time we had a great turnout, we had 20 people, it was great. The second time, we didn't have that many, we had maybe 5 to 7, and my husband back there with multiple sclerosis thinks he's gonna be smart and get on his lawnmower, and he gets on a little incline, and that thing flips on him 3 times. And from what he looked like afterwards, I'm very, it has put me aback to try to organize these things, you know, because it's gonna take everybody, the citizens, to get it done,
Well,
to be honest with you.
unfortunately, I agree that there are many people who are negligent with how they dispose of their garbage. And unfortunately, it's incumbent upon the government, and we should have the staff to at least keep our downtown area not looking like an off-ramp on I-20. You know, we do more than our own picking up the garbage around our own properties. But I think it's incumbent upon the city to make sure that that's a basic service that should be provided.
It's well known what you and your wife have done.
Yeah, well, I'm not looking for
No,
any
I'm not
whatsoever.
saying you are, I
As a
just
matter of
want
fact, I'm not even referring to necessarily the downtown area.
you
There are a
are,
number-
and I appreciate it.
There are a number of areas within the city limits that just look atrocious to me, and I personally, if I were a city employee, it would be a dereliction of my duty to be driving past it all the time and leaving that garbage sit there for weeks and months. I can appreciate what you say, Mr. Mayor, about them picking up certain areas, but they're at 7th Street. I mean, the brush, the areas on 7th Street are littered with garbage that's been there for months. You know, there's numerous other areas I could point out. Savage Road, the triangle down there, there's an accumulation of garbage that's been there for months, if not years, that the city hasn't touched. So I understand, you know, you may have asked some of the city employees to look at some areas, but there certainly are a number of areas where staff at the city drives past, and it's atrocious. It really, it's just not, it's not worthy of the city that I live in. So that's not how I would keep my yard, and I would expect the city to keep it as nice as I would like to see it. That's what our tax dollars should be used for.
We're gonna have to raise taxes.
Bye, Mary.
It's fine. something that you might want to consider at some point,
Yes.
having a clean and beautiful person, and then they work with the community to set up cleanup days plus, I mean, it's a higher position, but, you know, you might could get someone that would come and work part-time to do that kind of work and set up with the businesses to adopt streets and roads in the city. And that would be that businesses, like I know that my husband works at JM, John's Mantle, and a part of that road there, their company is responsible for keeping that road clean and wider.
Would you call it?
Huh?
What
Clean
kind
and,
of highway?
it's called Clean and Beautiful.
Person?
Yeah, Clean and Beautiful Person. But, I know that the county at one time, had that, I don't know if it still exists. But that person's responsible for setting up, you know, the community cleanup.
I hear that rain coming down. Mrs. Mayor wants to talk.
Yes.
I know that they were advertising in the paper for online Master Gardener class.
Yeah, so that.
If you reach out to, I think UGA is sponsoring it, because part of their requirements is community service. And you might be able to get them to come and help organize and do the flower beds and things in the spring and the summer and the fall, because that is part of their, requirements to get their Master Gardener license.
Isn't that what you said, the words you were not?
And that would be something that person would do, is be setting up like what she's saying.
That
Communicating
is
with those people.
And then they don't charge you to do that, but maybe instead of the beautification group planting the flowers and then hoping that the city workers have time to water them, this could be something that could be organized and it won't cost the city money.
Yeah. That's a
I mean,
good idea.
a lot of communities have, what do they call them, like not master gardeners, but, they go around and they do the flower beds and all of that.
Garden clubs.
Garden clubs, thank you. I don't know if there's a local garden club. I know Pennsylvania, that's a big thing.
It was, but it's kind of.
People are losing interest in that, and I, you know.
Yeah.
One of those old,
Yeah, I'm like him, you know, Alan, we take pride in what our
She
yard looks
just
like.
called your sister old, by the way.
Oh, my
I'm
sister's
with-
the vice
I'm with
president
them.
of the National
I'm with it.
Garden people.
Yeah.
I think we're dealing with two problems actually. I think one is right-of-way stuff that falls on the city and the flower beds that the city owns, that sort of thing. But I also think it's a code enforcement issue. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about having a proactive code enforcement. I actually talked with Hal from Bureau Veritas just this week about some of these same issues.
Well, Dollar General would be an example, if you've been over there, I mean,
It's
just.
nasty over there in the parking lot. There's a lot of debris blowing, trash blowing around and stuff. Well, I've seen it. And, you know, that's private property would have to follow any code enforcement versus, you know, the city workers going over there, even though the city is contracting to those guys. But, you know, that's something that, we recently discussed again with him. I personally hope that, I know it's, months off, but I personally hope that we can fund a proactive code enforcement in the city instead of reactive, because as it stands right now, somebody does have to make a complaint and fill it out, or call and have the city fill it out before our code enforcement will go out and do anything about it. And that creates a problem, a big problem, I see it. Because there's a lot of stuff that's on the sidewalks that shouldn't be there, there's a lot of stuff in parking lots that shouldn't be there, a lot of things in, you know, in residents that are violations of codes. And, you know, if somebody doesn't call in as it stands now, nothing gets done. So I'm hoping that, you know, we can push sooner the better, personally, for proactive code enforcement where they actually go out and drive and see these problems and then take action instead of waiting for somebody. You know, you drive by it, you see it, and then you wait on somebody to call you and tell you there's a problem. If you see it, you know, I feel like they should be cited, or at least give them a warning to clean it up. But,
Well,
you know,
primarily what I was talking about was probably city easement property.
yeah.
Right?
And I know what you're talking about down on Savage. When I go by in the morning, there's on the right of way there, there's quite a bit of, litter that people throw out, unfortunately. And I think a good portion of it probably, I can't prove this, but probably is through trash pickup. I've seen stuff blow out from trash, trash trucks as they go down through there as well, but,
That's
it's still trash.
something the city should be responsible for. I mean, obviously, if it's on city easement properties, it falls under the city's responsibility, regardless of how it got there.
You said the prisoners come clean, do they still do that?
We don't, we voted that out of the budget last.
COVID shut it down.
Yep.
We were paying for it, weren't getting it, and I said, no sense in me doing it. Hopefully we'll get through this and maybe we can pay a little extra and get Jackson County because it's a much better quality of prison help, but, at this point, it was not
That was an extra
prudent to go into a contract, we weren't gonna be able to get any benefit, but yeah, they did do some of that. If they had a good guard, that, because that wasn't always the case either, and we had citizen complaints about that, so, we're trying. All right, any other questions or concerns?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this point, everyone has the minutes, if they have opportunity to look over, any questions, corrections?
Motion to approve the December 15th minutes.
Second?
Second. Oh, well, go ahead.
All right, and all those in favor? Unanimous. At this point, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Those two.
No, you won't.
I'll second it.
All right.
Gary or
Gary, Dwight done
You
his
can go,
deal.
All right, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you all for coming. Sorry it took so long.